Squid Game was an amazing show, and I think most people would agree. Everything from the tense drama, the characters, and the surreal nature of it all was enough to get anyone hooked. But what was most intriguing for me was the strange symbolism I noticed throughout the show. It made me think twice about the deeper meaning behind Squid Game and why it was so universally loved across the globe. Most of the commentary about why the show was such an international success tends to focus on the universal theme of wealth inequality and the lengths that people are willing to go to acquire fortune. Even the writer-director of the series had this to say about it. I wanted to convey something that would resonate not just for Korean people, but globally. I did try to convey a message about modern capitalism. As I said, it's not profound. As we'll examine in this series, Squid Game is indeed far more profound than most of us realize. The story conceals the archetypal myth of rebirth, a monomyth found in sacred stories told in every culture, both living and extinct around the world. We will examine Squid Game in the context of a few ancient philosophies whose basis is the archetypal rebirth story: Gnosticism, Hermeticism, alchemy, and shamanism. Symbolism from each of these philosophies appears abundantly throughout the show and serve to reinforce the deeper story being conveyed in Squid Game. Arguably, it's this deeper story that is the reason why Squid Game is able to transcend cultural boundaries and resonate with so many. By uncovering these hidden symbols, not only can we come to a greater appreciation of Squid Game, but we can also learn how to use the myths and philosophies found in ancient stories, religions, and spiritual practices to help us better tap into universal archetypes and craft stories that can resonate for a global audience. The underlying framework for Squid Game appears to borrow heavily from the cosmogony of a little-known sect of early Christians and Jews known as Gnostics, who formed around the 1st century AD. The core of the cosmogony of the Gnostics was that this universe is not the true universe, and it is being run by a demented god they called the Demiurge. According to Gnostics, the Demiurge was the lord of the world and ruler of matter. It was responsible for creating and running the physical world. In a balanced universe, the Demiurge was subordinate to the will of the ruling Logos, or God. Its job was to craft the physical universe based on the archetypal blueprints thought up by the Logos, manifesting them in physical reality. However, according to the Gnostics, a corruption occurred and the Logos got cut off from the Demiurge. As a result, humanity was thrown into darkness and became blind to our higher nature. Thus, we exist in two worlds, one characterized by unconsciousness and ruled by the law of the jungle, and one more subtle, characterized by a vast and deep intelligence connected to the universe. Like Christianity, the hero of the Gnostics was Christ. However, they differed from Christians by their belief that Christ was not a person, but rather an intelligence sent from the Logos in order to liberate this world from the Demiurge. It was a force that would help to bridge the gap between the spiritual and the physical, between the conscious and unconscious self. The intelligence of Christ could be embodied by anyone, and the path to this state of consciousness was found through the ability to receive gnosis, or knowledge. To the Gnostics, anything but the Logos was corruptible, and man existed in between the higher Logos and the lower Demiurge, which was considered chaos. Without the aid of gnosis, or knowledge, mankind was blind and constantly in a delicate balance, easily succumbing to chaos if not careful. Thus, in the Gnostic view, the inherent state of mankind is that of a fool, that is, one who treads in darkness, blind to any outcome, and it's gnosis, which makes one able to see and hear. Let's examine how all of this relates to Squid Game. While all of the characters in Squid Game are fools to a degree, two of the characters, Oh Il-nam, or 001, and Seong Gi-hung, or 456, embody this archetype the most. Throughout the series, 001 is dismissed as an old, feeble man not capable of competing. However, we learn at the end that he is actually the creator of the games. Not much is known about his past, except that he had a job that dealt with money, is extremely wealthy, and he is dying. He believes that people cannot escape their true nature, which is to look out for yourself above all others. Oh Il-nam and Seong become close, almost developing a father-son relationship, and it is likely because Oh Il-nam saw Seong as an anomaly, someone who challenged this deeply held belief within himself. Throughout the series, Seong is constantly putting others first and doing his best to help where he can. He sticks with the old man, even though everyone else dismissed him. Even though 001 built the game and knows the rules, he ultimately embodies the fool because he spent his whole life believing the worst in human nature. This one-sided belief has made him blind to the true potential of humanity, illustrated by one of the last scenes in the series, where Seong comes to visit him on his deathbed. The other fool, Seong Ki-hung, begins the series as a gambling addict. Gambling can be argued to be a fool's game, and this is certainly the case for 456. He gambles every bit of money he has, and the show starts with him at his lowest point. He lives with his mother, who nags him every chance she can, and is indebted to dangerous loan sharks. He is divorced, and his ex-wife is planning to move to the United States with their daughter. Gambling is a fool's game because it's an act of pure chance. It's placing complete faith in an outcome without knowing if one will succeed or not. Seong constantly embodies this. As soon as he gets a little bit of money, he immediately bets it, believing without question that he will win big. In the show, even the VIPs make bets with each other as to who will win, showing that even the gods are blind as to the true outcome, and anything is possible. 001, believing that human nature is unchanging, became god of his own universe, where the only rule is survive at all cost. The parallels to Gnostic cosmogony is obvious. 001 represents a Gnostic demiurge, while 456 embodies a liberating hero, the fool who, through a trial by fire, achieves gnosis, and is thus reborn into someone whose eyes have been opened. And not only does he eventually become the hero reborn, but at the end of the show, he decides to re-enter the game, a move that is a key element of both the Gnostic and Christian story of Christ sent to liberate the world. Perhaps the most interesting example of Squid Game's relationship to Gnostic mythology can be found in the VIPs, the mysterious elites who wear a golden animal mask. In Gnostic mythology, the corrupt demiurge, known as Aeldebaoth, gave birth out of himself 6 sons, who, together with their father, became the 7 planetary spirits. These were called the 7 archons or governors. Their names and their astrological associations are Io, or Jupiter, represented by the eagle; Sabaoth, Mars, represented by the tiger; Adonaios, or the sun, represented by the lion; Astaphios, or Venus, represented by the bull; Helios, or Mercury, represented by the deer; and Orios, the moon, represented by the bear; and Eldebaoth, or Saturn, is represented by the owl. According to Gnostic myth, Aeldebaoth and his 6 sons were proud and opposing spirits, who seek to establish a kingdom in the abyss, which shall prevail against the kingdom of God. To the Gnostics, humanity was trapped in an endless cycle of reincarnation, due to the archon's hold on materiality. In other ancient traditions, such as Hermeticism, a philosophical system primarily based on the purported teachings of Hermes, the physical world was less of a prison and more of a way to find liberation. In the famous Hermetic book, The Divine Pymander, Hermes meets the Great Dragon, a symbol commonly used to represent physical reality, whereby the dragon bestows upon him a vision of the purpose of life. In one part of the book, the Great Dragon describes to Hermes that when a person dies, their soul passes through the 7 spheres, whereby the person is gradually stripped of all negative parts until they stand naked and freed of all illusions. He writes, "It ascends the 7 rings, upon which sit the 7 governors, and returns to each their lower powers in this manner. Upon the first ring sits the moon, and to it is returned the ability to increase and diminish. Upon the second ring sits Mercury, and to it are returned deceit and craftiness. Upon the third ring sits Venus, and to it are returned the lusts and passions. Upon the fourth ring sits the sun, and to this lord are returned ambitions. Upon the fifth ring sits Mars, and to it are returned rashness and profane boldness. Upon the sixth ring sits Jupiter, and to it are returned the sense of accumulation and riches. And upon the seventh ring sits Saturn, at the gate of chaos, and to it are returned falsehood and evil plotting. In Squid Game, the contestants are put through 6 games, and in each game, they gradually lose a part of themselves. The contestants, through the constant fear and stress, are stripped down to their most basic form and attempt to force them to become the darkest part of themselves. While the 6th and final game is Squid Game, the 7th game could be considered the moment when Seong meets with OLM, or Saturn, on his deathbed. This is the moment when OLM confesses to Seong the true purpose of the game. As shown previously, it's during this moment that OLM's long-held belief that mankind only does what's best for themselves is proven wrong when a stranger saves the freezing homeless man. The false belief of the nature of man is finally released upon the death of OLM, and Seong enters the 8th sphere according to Hermetic philosophy. From a Gnostic perspective, Squid Game is an allegory for the attempt at the creation of a universe cut off from any light. The VIPs act as gods, and OLM, as the creator of the game, is a demiurge. From a Hermetic perspective, the games themselves are a metaphor for spiritual growth. Each game gradually breaks the individual down until they either succumb to total darkness or transcend it. As you can see, Squid Game holds far more meaning than what appears on the surface. In part 2, we will go even deeper and explore the hidden alchemical allegory being told.